Welcome to Unleashed, the podcast where we redefine leadership by focusing on what truly matters, the people driving change. Change leadership is about guiding people through transformation in a way that inspires them to embrace change because they believe in it. Whether you're a leader looking to foster a culture of growth or someone eager to break through barriers in life and business, this podcast is for you. Now our host, Wendi.
Thank you for joining the Unleashed podcast, where we are going to talk about the blueprint of leadership. My name is Wendi Swanson. Today, we have a very special guest with us. His name is Matt Gould. Matt Gould and I have worked together. I don't know how many years ago. We haven't been able to figure that out. I always make myself sound so old and my guest just as old. It's been at least 25 years, right, Matt?
Yep, it has been.
So really looking forward to hearing the wisdom that you have learned from the last time that we worked together. I know that your career has changed a little bit. Just to give our listeners a little bit of background on who you are, Matt. Matt is a master negotiator, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about that later. He also does a lot with mediation. And he has been passionate his entire career about growing people, about growing businesses. And Matt, I know that you have taken all the learnings and all the challenges from your career in corporate world in, growing people and growing organizations, taking them from single individual contributors to being leaders in organizations. And now you are bringing that into your executive leadership coaching business. So just get us up to speed. What got you here and what is it that gets you out of bed every day?
Thanks, Wendi. I think I'm paying it back. So you talked about our age and how long we've known each other. I'm 53 at the recording of this, and the wisdom comes from mistakes. So I think if the word wisdom, it equals how many mistakes have you made, and then how do you learn to share, what's the lesson you get from the mistake? So thanks for saying, I'm going to bring some wisdom. I'm actually going to share some of the mistakes. So the learning from the mistakes.
I love that.
And a mentor early on that you and I know in common. And so I'm just passionate about the mentorship and coaching I got after an initial big blunder in my career. I'm just passionate about that, being a mentor to someone, being a coach to someone, because I know firsthand the impact of that.
So Matt, I'm going to put you on the spot. We hadn't planned to do this. You said it. So I'm going to bring you there. So take us into that moment of that blunder. And it's okay to say Bruce Herskovich. He was actually on a podcast, and I'm going to reference that. So we will put that link into the show notes as well, because he does offer a lot of wisdom. So would you be willing to share with us what that blunder was and how did that lead you to where you are today?
Yeah. So graduated in 1994 from university. And my roommate's brother, so a lot of the theme of my history is relationship based. And every single sale that I know in the history of humankind is when someone says, hey, and the other person responds, hey. It starts with a relationship.
I love that.
So upon meeting my roommate in university, he introduced me to his brother, and his brother asked me to go and work in the telecom industry. And back in 1994, Wendi, cell phones were taking off, absolutely taking off. And so I don't know if it was my skill or just the wave of telecom, but I was promoted really early. And so I was promoted from a salesperson to a leader of people. And it lasted 9 months, Wendi. My tenure as a leader of a team was only 9 months long. And I call it demoted or moved back to a single contributor role, and it devastated me. And so I thought to myself, I don't think it's necessarily my capability intellectually. It's my ability to relate to people that was the problem. And I didn't know where to turn. So one day I'm golfing with Bruce Herskovich, who at the time was our vice president of retail sales for TELUS, big TELUS. And I asked him if he'd be willing to mentor me. And that started my career turnaround without a doubt. That's one of the pinpoint places that I can say changed my entire career and my entire existence on
Yeah.
planet Earth. Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, well, I say thank you to Bruce as well, because I have a son who is 25 years old. I still can't believe that. And we just moved him to Phoenix last weekend, and he got a job promotion with a company that I would love to do a case study on, because they are just absolutely, I believe, one of the best companies out there. And it's been so interesting, because when he first started working for this company, the first person I called is Bruce Herskovitchy. And I said, would you mentor my son?
Wow.
And
Wow.
so, to me, that's why we do what we do, Matt, is exactly what you're talking about. And the passion that you have for growing businesses is all about growing people. And so
Yeah.
I'm curious, what were those things that you didn't have when you were demoted that you maybe didn't know that you needed? What did you develop, and therefore what do you give to people today that you just didn't know what you didn't know? Like I talk about, people don't wake up in the morning wanting to suck. You didn't wake up that
Right.
morning going, man, I hope I suck.
Right.
There was something that either you didn't know, or so dig into that a little bit for us, the learnings and how you were mentored.
So I woke up in my early days, not wanting to suck, to use your phrase. And so the opposite of that is I need to show up as a leader and think I need to have it all together. So my ego was massive. And that's what I call it, edging groups out. Ego can stand for edging groups out, or edging greatness out.
Mm.
And for those of you who have faith, it's like edging God out. It's like, oh, I've got this.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my downfall initially, was I needed to have it all together. When I chose Bruce as my mentor, first thing I said to him, and I'll never forget this, I said, what do I need to do? Tell me what to do.
Mm.
And great mentors and great coaches, they don't answer that question. They inquire and ask you, where are you trying to get to? So the number one ingredient for sure is I learned to be humble and curious. So curiosity is the ticket. So in retail, I'll bring it back to relationships in retail. We can try to sell someone something. I could try to sell you executive coaching, Wendi, but that's me wanting to get something out of me. If I get curious and I wonder, where are you trying to get to, Wendi? Where are you trying to take your business? Where are you trying to take your podcast? And I can be curious.
Mm-hmm.
An even better outcome can come from that. So I went from trying to have it all together as a leader, and I embraced humility, vulnerability by saying I don't know, and curiosity. Where do you think we should go? And by being curious, I got way more input, and the team came up with way better outcomes.
Mm.
So yeah, curiosity for sure.
So I'm curious. So yeah,
Yes.
pun totally intended. Yeah, you brought me to curiosity. So how then did you grow back into that management role, and how tactically is it the questions that you ask? How did that then transform the way you lead and the way that you manage?
I think I got out of the way, or I know I got out of the way. So my historical perspective on a leader was the leaders at the top or the leaders in front. And if you think about the leader being up top, you're only as good as your leader can be. And if you're in front, you can only go as far as the leader can go. And I flipped that on its head I got reintroduced to my team. Some of the people who had said, you got to get rid of Matt, when I came back as the leader, they were still there. And this will sound like I'm bragging. 3 or 4 of them said, what's changed? Like, we actually like working for you now.
Yeah.
This was after 3 or 4 months
Mm-hmm.
of building trust again. What changed was, rather than be at the head of the table as the manager or the leader, with his door closed and his name on the door way back when we had doors, I had a metaphorical perspective of being at a round table. Well, who's the leader at a round table? It's hard to point out who the leader is. And so I came back to this team with this round table mentality, getting around a round table, getting around a campfire in older days, and telling stories about Where might we go? What are we capable of? How are we doing so far? And listening to the voices of the team and then saying, we've got some options on how we move forward. That was I now say it now easily in hindsight, but that's what I did. I reapproached the team, not as the top, not as the boss, but as a team member. TELUS used the language team member. I thought initially it was just corporate speak. It's real. We're all team members trying to reach the vision, the goal, and the mission.
Yeah.
So that's how I reintroduced myself. And it was night and day. And the people would say it. They would say, what changed?
That's powerful. I was just, as I said, I moved my son to Phoenix last weekend, and I have a dear, dear cousin, Brooke, who is the women's ministry pastor at Cactus at Scottsdale Bible.
Yeah.
And, we were having this wonderful dialogue about leadership. And she's like, Wendi, are there some people who just aren't supposed to lead, or can anyone be a leader? And we had some great dialogue around that. I'm curious, Matt, what are your thoughts on that? Can anyone lead?
My belief historically was you needed a title to lead. You needed signing authority. You needed access to, a certain level of finances in order to lead. You needed certain education. And
you needed a name on the door, like back in the day when we had a door. I love that picture.
Yeah, you need a name on the door. You needed a parking spot. Oh, once I have a parking spot.
Oh, parking spot. I never had
with my name, and I ended up getting one, then I'm a leader. Here's my answer in 2024. Every single person, how many people are there on planet Earth? 7.5 billion, 8 billion. Sure. Every one of those, from my perspective, is a leader. Some don't have people following them. They're a leader. They just don't have people following them because of some of the decisions they make, or the mission they're on, or their purpose in life. But they're a leader. They're leading themselves somewhere, and they're going somewhere. So I believe everyone is a leader. I think of an experience on an airline. Who's the leader? I need to speak to the CEO of the airline. I need to speak to the chairman. No, you don't. You need to speak to the flight attendant. The flight attendant is leading the experience I have with the airline. Different levels of responsibility. They're all leaders. The second thing I would say, Wendi, maybe when we meet up in person one day, we can have the conversation about followers. 7.5 billion or 8 billion people on this planet are also followers. So we're leaders and we're followers. Great. Where are we going? What are we doing? How do we be in relation to each other? How do we join and be allies with each other rather than adversaries against each other? And so curiosity, to me, one of the things, and you mentioned mediation and negotiation at the beginning, I was quite adversarial with my team. You need to do it this way. You need to do it this way. After learning that wasn't working, and it cost a lot of energy and friction and turnover and so many different negative costs to the business and to the humans, I went into seeing everyone else as an ally. So I showed up as an ally. Our business took off. Was it the industry?
So different.
In part, sure. But also, we came up with the best ideas. It didn't have to be my best idea. Yeah, so I think everyone on this planet is a leader and everyone is a follower.
So I'm curious, I want to go back to something that you said about not every leader has a follower. So one of my favorite quotes is John Maxwell. And he says, if you want to know if you're leading, at some point, just go ahead and take a walk. And at some point, stop and look back. Is anyone following you? If no one's following you, you aren't leading. You're simply taking a walk. And I actually talked about the fact that one of the biggest measurements of leadership is followership. So if you're not leading anyone, like what does that look like?
Well, maybe, and sometimes when we hear these snippets from Instagram and these quotes, it's missing the other side of the quote. Sometimes we need a leader to go solo for a while.
Mm.
And there's no followers because that leader is doing something that's disruptive and innovative, and people don't know yet. So they might be watching the person go down the road on their own. But boy, when they, or girl, when they find a new innovation,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they turn around and see that there's someone following them, or at least
Mm.
being curious and interested.
Mm.
Right? I didn't hear about I didn't know what Facebook was. I wasn't following Facebook, and I'm dating myself possibly. Instagram, I didn't follow anything to do with Instagram for long until, so they got another follower. They got another follower. They got another follower. So even if you're going down on a road or a journey on your own, and you turn around and no one's there, you have to ask yourself, do I keep going? Or why is no one following me? You have to get curious.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the people who have kept going, they now have a lot of followers, and they've made a big impact in the world because of their conviction and belief of where they were headed.
Yeah. So interesting that, it's, and you probably had the same experience when I graduated from college. I graduated with a business degree,
Hmm.
and I wasn't even given the option to take a leadership course. I mean, it just wasn't even leadership. What are you talking about? Management. I took, management 101 all the way up to, I think the 400 level course.
Yeah.
Leadership was not even an option. And
Hmm.
now all of a sudden today, leadership is defined in so many different ways. And we actually have executive leadership coaches like you. I mean,
Yes.
Matt, 10 years ago, we didn't have executive coaches.
Right.
So why today do we have coaches when 10 years ago that was not even, it was not even an option?
Yeah, a couple things that come up for me as you say that right now. You took management courses because you were to manage elements of the business and manage possibly people.
People in process and yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I don't like to be managed.
Yeah.
Right? I like when my mom would manage me or parent me, I didn't really like it. Right? I like to be led though. And
Mm,
so I think leadership too, maybe earlier than 10 years ago, it was a position.
mm,
Right? Even in 1994 or 1998, I'm like, oh, I'm a leader now. So where I'm going with this is I think what happened, two things happened from my experience is leadership was no longer a position. Everyone was a leader. So why don't we give people leadership skills? I think the second thing that happened, and you've experienced it, I've experienced it, is with the access to information with the internet and social media, we no longer have an information problem. Information, you can Google how to be a great leader, and you'll get some incredible content in about a fraction of a second. What became challenging was, well, how do I execute the information that I've gained? So when
mm,
you talk about the leadership blueprint, what I don't want your listeners to believe is that there is a blueprint that they must follow.
mm,
What I believe is create your blueprint, create your purpose, create your core values. Like actually sit with a coach, sit with yourself, Wendi, sit with a mentor, sit with someone else and co-create your own blueprint.
mhm.
So yeah, I think a couple of things I said there. I think the access information leveled the playing field, and what became important was getting access to, say, a coach who would coach you on the nuances that you could shift.
Mm.
And when, in sports, when you have a coach, they can make these subtle nuances that have a massive impact. And that's where I think coaching came out. And that was my experience when I received mentorship and then paid coaching. The subtle shifts I made sped up
Mhm.
both the performance that I was delivering and then my growth as an individual.
Powerful. I'm thinking about, I was doing some research. I'm doing a conference next week in Edmonton, Canada, actually, and I'm super excited about it. So I was doing some research on just leadership. What are some of the most critical things that leaders are experiencing today in terms of their challenges? And it was this article that had the top 5 challenges that leaders are faced with today. And the first 4 had to do with AI. The
Mm.
first 4.
Yeah.
And I thought, and then finally the fifth was learning how to connect with their people.
Yes.
And I thought, okay, if we handle the fifth, how many of those other things that we're worrying about are never going to come to fruition?
Yeah.
And then I think about all the calls that I've had over the last, I would just say even the year. And I'm talking to so many companies that are having to make a decision whether or not to cut training budget and put it into marketing and put it into product and put it into research and all of these other things, because they don't see that they're getting a direct return on investment in training because they're looking at revenue. And, when I put those two things together, I thought, okay, we have an increase in people who are hiring executive leadership coaches. And I'm curious if part of that is because we have more and more companies who are investing less and less in their people and more in systems and processes. That's a big question. You do this every day.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Does that contribute to it?
Yeah, what I believe, what you just said is you and I make up. You and I both are physically fit, and we may, in some point in our time, gone to a gym. We know how to lift the weight. We know how to go on the treadmill. We know how to follow the screen and follow the instructions. If we had a personal trainer there with us, if we could afford it, would you, answer this question, do you think you would do the exercise longer, harder, more accurately, and get a better burn than if you were just to do it on your own without anyone else there?
100% and more consistently. If I don't have somebody that I'm meeting at the gym, I'm probably not going.
So your answer was, and to your listeners, 100% likelihood
100%.
you push yourself stronger and you follow the processes that you've been trained on more effectively.
Yes.
All right. So coaching that is what coaching does. Now, listen, it's a privilege. There's a cost to it. Not everyone can invest in it. Here's what I would like to introduce. You can't afford not to anymore. You can't afford not to invest in coaching your people, because relationships in business equal revenue. The quality of the relationship that your team members have with each other generates efficiency and revenue and healthy workplaces. And a happy employee is a healthy employee. An unhappy employee with their leader, I believe there's a statistic that it's 75% of people leave their company because of their manager or their leader, not because of the product, not because of anything else. And often they leave their manager or leader and they go down the road and work in the same industry just for a new leader.
Yeah, not uncommon.
And that is costly and expensive. So when we're investing in people, it's the relationship. Well, I don't know how you learn relationship through an online course. It's nuance. You need to be watched. You need to be considered. You need to be curious. A coach asks you, hey, when you did that, what was the impact? Oh, this happened. What could you do differently next time? It's real life. It's relationship based. It's situational based coaching. When this happened, what happened? And then we coach around it. And because it's a blueprint for the individual, they make a new choice, which is authentic to them, not something they learned on YouTube. It's just different. We get to explore it. We get to go deeper and really understand what's driving the behavior. And the client understands. And when the client understands, it's more sustainable over time. And then they generate, hopefully, more impactful relationships. And when you have really good relationships, there's efficiency, trust, and revenue and commerce flows.
So you have this experience in being a negotiator and being a mediator and being a retailer, and all of those things now have led you into a career in executive leadership coaching.
Yeah.
How has all of that led you into what you're doing now?
Because of the benefit I've seen. the benefit of employees, the benefit of customers, if you take away those labels, employees and customers that I just shared, the humanity of being in relationship with each other to get to a goal, I've just learned from experience. I've learned the hard way. I was the non-humane, if that's a word. I was the manager, the dictator, literally, who said, do this, thou shalt do this to be successful. And I know where it led. It didn't lead, it led to less than performance. And I heard a phrase the other day, we're all going somewhere. And the expression was, we're all returning home. We can either return home fighting the whole way or loving the whole way. And I know from sports, if you're having more fun and you're not under extreme pressure, you're actually having fun and trusting your teammates and trusting general management and trusting ownership and trusting the mission to try to win the cup or the Super Bowl or whatever sport, you actually play better. So what's led me to this is I'm passionate about people thriving mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. And I believe, and it's proven, there's so much proof out there, that when you do it in a humane, relational way, you generate extraordinary results. Actually, extraordinary results, 5-star. And when you do it the other way, you still might get profit, but boy, is that a costly way. That's a really costly way to do it, the fighting way or the loving way.
Yeah.
So that might be too light for some people or too soft and fluffy. But watch over time as artificial intelligence starts to level that playing field of efficiencies and so on. Watch that be a differentiator in addition to the human element, which is relational capital.
Yeah. Well, and that's such a great analogy, Matt, for, I like to say, choose your hard.
Yes.
Because we're all a day closer, right, to the end of our life, and so we can either spend the end of our life fighting tooth and nail and not choosing to be curious, not choosing to humble ourselves, not choosing to get to know ourselves and be authentic and transparent and all of those things that you're talking about. That's hard. Well, it's also hard to love. And so choose your hard. Which would you rather? For those of our listeners who are married, it's hard to be married. I've never had the opportunity to learn that. I watch people, it's hard to be married.
I've been married 26 years.
Oh, wow.
And listen, the quality of my, listen here. The quality of my relationship has improved exponentially. When I learned how to engage in truthful conversations. Other people might call that conflict. Passion for mine in mediation and negotiation and leadership is often don't have the confidence or the courage to speak the truth. Or if we do speak the truth, we're not skilled at it and it causes issues. What I've learned in marriage, and I think similar to being in relationship with people at work, we're a team. I look at my wife and we see each other as a team, and we have 3 kids, and that's a team of 5. And then it just goes beyond, it goes into the community and so on. We're on the same team. So we could be at conflict with each other, or we can engage in fruitful, truthful conversations that are built on trust and love and care. And we get bigger and better because of it. So I think there's this passion around the cost of avoiding conflict. I used to be a conflict avoider, Wendi, and it brought my business down, like in my corporate career, a conflict avoider, a people pleaser. People stopped trusting me. As soon as I learned how to speak the truth in service of the purpose, in service of the mission, in service of the goals, in service of the values, in service of caring for my ally teammate, trust went through the roof. So some people say, like, I can't believe what you just said. And yet the person who I said it to said, oh my gosh, thank you for telling me the truth.
That's right.
You're one of the few people who's told me.
That's
and so they trust me. And you might have heard, maybe we have a mutual friends. I'm sure one of your friends has said business moves at the speed of trust. Well, boy, what if we could run into conflict skillfully and respectfully? That will speed up trust. That will speed up relationship. And we can thrive that way.
Yeah.
My opinion, my
Yeah.
experience too.
Well, and so those are some of the things, when we say choose your hard, whether it's conflict avoidance, whether it's being skilled at leaning into conflict and being truthful, leaning into being married for 26 years, which takes
Yeah.
work. Divorce,
Oh,
divorce is also hard.
yeah.
So, what are some of those things that in your executive coaching, do you have some skills that you teach? I know you have an acronym that I remember, WTF, which I
Yeah.
think is probably not what most people are thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can share some of your skill sets that you teach like that, your models.
Yeah. So very briefly, WTF is a universal expression,
Yes, it
stands
is.
stands for what the bleep. And what I know after WTF, it also can stand for what to flight or who to fight.
Mm,
And we are wired that way. And it's really, really great that we're wired that way because we've survived.
mhm,
Right? If I'm nervous of something, oh, who to flight, where to flight, like fleeing some people is a good idea because you stay alive.
mm, mm,
Fighting some people is actually a good idea because multiple people will stay alive. So WTF in going through years and years and years of coaching, one of my call it internet, what do they call it? Tech investors. He asked me one day, we were over on Salt Spring Island, and he sat down and he said, Matt, what are some of the trends you see in executive coaching?
mm,
And his name's Jason. I said, Jason, I don't look for trends. I just coach in the moment. He said, well, do yourself a favor and do your clients a favor. Look for trends because you do so many hours of coaching. So 2 years later, I came back and I said, here's some of the trends. And this is a big one. Executives, teams, team members, employees, wives, single people, doesn't matter. The universal experience that they have in often situations is WTF. WTF good? Oh my gosh, this happened. I'm so excited. Or WTF minus. This is bad. When I thought about that, people who come through the other side always answer the question, so what now? So based on the facts or the fiction of what's just happened, what's my choice? I have agency to choose so what
mm,
now or so where next. And this model of WTF to so what now has helped companies grow significantly. I've worked with a team for 8 years, and of the 12 retail locations they have, 8 of them are led by single contributors from 5 or 6 years ago.
mm,
And are now the general managers of these multi-million-dollar stores in a short period of time. And by working with them, we now have this model where we talk about WTF, something's happened that's either great for us or not great for us. We have our purpose, our mission, and our goals to go after. So what's the adjustment we need to make? Not necessarily to address the initial emotional reaction of WTF, but to hit the goals in alignment with our values.
mhm,
So that's a model that has had a lot of success. Even with our national police force, we're coaching and training this idea of WTF, there's a situation. What are our core values? What's our mission? So what's the choice I can make in alignment with that? So there's a lot of agency and ownership, Wendi, versus historical leadership is point, blame, fire. It's not me, it's you. Well,
mm.
that's very not relational
Yeah,
and it's very expensive
yeah.
financially and emotionally.
So, when I talk to companies that are debating whether or not to invest in leadership training for their people, one of the things that I've heard is, as you said earlier, there's so much information out there. If somebody wants to learn to be a better leader, there is that really my responsibility to do that? Because there's so much information for them to actually go do it. If you want to be a better leader, do that. Not my
Yep.
responsibility. What would you say to those companies that are going, you know what? You go do that. That's you. We're running a business, and really separate that leadership from the company.
I'd ask them, how's it working for them? How is it working to cut your training budget? The answer might be, and that's why it's a curious question. Oh, it's really working for us. Okay. How are you going to grow? Well, we're going to introduce AI and we're going to do this one. Okay, great. And people plus processes plus product equals performance.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing on the people side?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, have an answer for that. What are you
Yeah.
doing with it? I think the other thing, in fairness, Wendi, is Google. If I sit down in front of Google or social media or some internet platform, I might not know where to look.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking with people like yourself, Kurt, a friend of ours, who's been on your podcast and will be on your podcast, Bruce, me, other human beings, ask them their stories about when they invested in their people, whether it's through training or coaching or otherwise, or mentorship. What was the impact? And I don't know what their experience was. My experience is from people that I've been exposed, why I'm in this industry, is when we connect human to human with someone and we champion them to become the best version of themselves, the results, I have so much proof, are greater than if they did it on their own. So look, leaders are going to make their own decisions. I don't know the right way. You don't know the right way. From experience, we're dealing with humans. And when two humans get together and they're allies, great things can happen.
Mm-hmm.
When two humans get together and they're adversaries, we know the cost and expense to that.
Okay.
I
So
don't know if I
Matt,
answered your question,
you
Wendi. Did
did.
I?
Yeah, you totally did. So, you believe that everyone can be a leader. You believe that everyone is a leader.
Everyone
You
is
believe
one.
that followership has a lot to do with leadership. You obviously see great benefit in partnering with people to help you grow personally and to learn how to be authentic and to learn how to lead better and all of the relationship and connection and all of those things that we know are true of great leaders. So as we wrap this up, what advice would you give to our listeners? That I always like to leave them with something. As you said, information is not implementation. We do not have an information challenge. We have an execution challenge. So
Yeah.
what advice would you give to our listeners who are just really wanting to grow themselves and others?
This will sound like a buzzword.
Yeah.
Some of your listeners might hit end right now. It's the word vulnerability. Another word for that is authentic. And another word for that is truth. I would encourage people to open up and get curious and get into conversation. Just get into conversation with someone else and share where you're trying to go, share where you're at, get curious of where they've come from. How have they got to where they are? What's worked for them? If we can share, if your listeners can share and get into a relationship with someone, we'll learn from each other. We'll learn the stories. We'll learn what to do. We'll learn what not to do. Ultimately, though, after you've had those conversations, be vulnerable enough to commit to an action towards your goals and towards your vision and towards your authentic
Mhm.
self. So that would be my brief advice, or not advice, but my encouragement and my invitation to your listeners is, who aren't you talking to that you may want to go and have a conversation with?
Mm.
Who is the Bruce in your life that maybe you don't have yet?
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to you, reach out to me, reach out to people who are in this profession, not to be hired and not to sell commerce. Get curious, ask some
Mm-hmm.
questions. And I know, back to something I said earlier, Wendi, every single sale in the history of time started with someone saying, hey, this is for sale, but just not even this is for sale, hi. And the other person says, oh, hi.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that end up in a sale? Conversation, curiosity.
Yeah.
What are you looking for? Here's what I got. Will it serve you? Will it not? If it doesn't serve you, you might want to go and talk to this person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this network of relationship and conversation.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what
and
I
I
would encourage.
love I love your encouragement to be proactive about that. I have so many people that I'm so blessed to have people in my corner who are my mentors and who I can pick up the phone and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or, I think I may have a blind spot in this. I have this, you can't see my office right now. I have this wall where my Bible study leader came over Saturday and we were just going to make pizza. I mean, it turned into a big strategy session of, what's my why and what's really my purpose? And it's so cool. Like 8 hours she invested. So I have people like that in my life. I have my son who, when I'm in Russia and I'm about ready to go have a Russian translator and I just don't know how this is going to go. And I'm just, like I look down and there's this text, Mom, I'm on my knees. I'm praying for you and you've got this. So,
Wow.
thankfully and graciously, I have those people in my corner. And there are some people who are sitting there knowing that they need a mentor, they need someone. And I would just agree with you 100%, take action and go find that person. And I know that's not easy, whether it's a meetup
with
group.
the fear, Wendi, I want to say I want to acknowledge you for 1 second. WTF, with the fear, possibly for some of your listeners, of not knowing what to do, they stepped anyways. Just take a step. You didn't know when you had the Bible study, you didn't know it would turn out to become an 8-hour strategy session.
Right.
And you still said, hey, come over and we'll open up the word and we'll have some pizza. You stepped anyway. So listeners, consider letting go of what might happen, what might not happen, having to be in control, having to think, will this move make a difference or not? We don't know if the move will make a difference or not.
Yeah.
Until we take the step.
Yeah.
And so if you're in a place where you don't want to be in your career or in your production or in your performance, what's a different step you can take? Well, maybe go and ask someone or just take the step. You might be surprised what happens.
Well, and it's so interesting that you're saying that, Matt, because oftentimes it takes reaching out to somebody else and being that for someone else. And that's where it starts. You need that. And so be that for someone else, because in hindsight, I moved to Florida in the middle of COVID from Colorado. I was all by myself. My son was, went back to Oklahoma and here I am. And I was lonelier than I've ever been in my whole life because people were in isolation and I could not find my people. And it has taken me 3 years and it has taken getting out of my comfort zone and reaching out because I needed to be reached for. And so I just think that action that you're talking about is just crucial, whether it's professionally, personally, reach out and give those things that you are looking for.
How long have you had your podcast?
Let's see. It launched August 27th of 2024.
So it's fresh?
Brand new.
Did it take some courage and vulnerability to say, I'm going to launch a podcast, let's go?
Every single recording, I lean into failure. All I can say is we're getting better.
Okay, so WTF, just to land this point, welcome the failure with the feeling, with the fear. So what now? Let's get an audio recorder. So what now? You have a vision for your podcast. So thank you. You saying yes to me on this podcast, I hope this has an impact on your listeners, but you took the fear and with the feelings and you went for it.
Yeah.
And I get a return. You've mentioned you get an incredible return from it. Yeah. And you'll be surprised how many listeners one day tell you how impactful it was.
Well,
way to go. Way to take the risk.
That's the only reason I do this. If 2 people listen and one person gets something out of it and they do something different and they get better, that's the only reason that we do what we do. So, Matt, I just want to thank you so much for your investment of time and for all of your expertise and your years of wisdom and leaning into the development of yourself. First of all, I appreciate your humility and your curiosity, and that's what got us here. And thank you so much for being open and honest about that and sharing with us. And we will make sure that all of Matt's information is in the show notes. And so, Matt, thank you so much. I'm sure that we will do this again, and I just appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Wendi.
Thanks for listening to Unleash with Wendi Swanson. Make sure to subscribe and follow to be notified when the newest episodes of the podcast go live. Please take a moment to rate and review us. It helps others discover Unleashed and join our movement of forward-thinking leaders. You can find contact information and important links in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode, and remember, keep leading with authenticity, embrace change, and choose to live life unleashed.